Did you know that you can now do data virtualization with Azure SQL Managed Instance? Join me and Laura on this episode of Data Exposed SQL Insider Series to learn all about it and see some really cool demos for how to get started. This week on Data Exposed. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed SQL Insider Series. I am super excited to be welcoming back Laura, who has joined us before. Laura works in the field with a lot of our customers on deep engagements and with a lot of new technologies as well. So, Laura, firstly, just welcome back to Data Exposed.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me back. Nice to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And today we're going to be talking about something I'm just now hearing about, and this is data virtualization in Azure SQL Managed Instance. And before we get into kind of like what it is, how it works, and hopefully some cool demo maybe near the end, I wanted to ask, like, what are some of the scenarios where we're seeing customers want to use data virtualization with Azure SQL Managed Instance?
So first, Anna, I'm super excited about this feature. This feature lets customers query the data on blob storage or ADLS Gen 2 storage, their CSV or Parquet files, so they don't have to actually load the data into managed instance. So this comes in handy, like if you get new data in files and you want to explore it before you even figure out what to do with it, you can see what the format looks like, you can see what kind of data it contains. You don't have to ever load it into managed instance if you don't want to. So if you need an archiving scenario, maybe it's cool or cold data, you can push it out to your blob storage or to ADLS Gen 2 storage and just leave it there to query it. You can also kind of get away from having to do the whole ETL problem. So I don't have to necessarily use ADF or some other tool to load it into my managed instance. I can just leave it where it sits and query it. And then I can, because of the options and the functionality, so I can create an external table or I could use OpenRosette to query it. Then I can actually use Power BI or any of my other tools, connect to my managed instance, and still query that data where it lives and not have to worry about, managing a separate component there.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of different actually reasons you might want to use this. Today, if you were going to try to be querying these files, what can you currently do today?
So today I can store the files in ADLS Gen 2 or Azure Blob Storage, and I can read the files. So if I have CSV files or Parquet files, I can read them where they live. And so this comes in handy too, because with managed instance, we do have some size limitations. And so some customers find that they can just put the data or leave certain data that's not queried super frequently out on their storage and then not have to increase the cost of their managed instance. So that's another potential benefit for leveraging this feature.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anything else, or should we dive in and take a look?
So I want to just touch on there's two different ways to query the data. So we've
Okay.
got OpenRosette, which lets you do like quick exploration, but I can still create an external table. So like if I have data that I want to repeatedly query, say it shows up in a report, that's when I would want to use the external table because I'm going to get better performance out of
Okay, got it. Makes sense.
that. Okay, so let's get into the demo.
Great.
Okay, so to set this up, what I did is I created a database, my SQL Insider Virtualization Demo database. And in the preview, we had to actually enable the polybase feature within the instance. With a GA, we don't have to do that anymore. Also, there was a change in some of the formatting. So you'll notice here on my screen, I've got this create external data source, and you'll notice that now it's prefaced with ABS. And this is a public data source. So it's an external public data source actually located in East US. And this means it's Azure Blob Storage. If I were connecting to ADLS Gen 2, my Azure Data Lake storage, you would see an ADLS preface. In the early preview, you would have seen HTTPS. So I just want to call this out. If you had actually played with this early on, there were some formatting changes. So you have the preface change, and then you'll also notice that it's in the format of container at my storage account and then the path. Okay, so I have a couple options here on how I can do this. I can go ahead and I can create my external data source. And then I can use this query here that's going to go ahead and select using Open Row Set. So it specifies the specific Parquet file, and then it specifies the data source that I had just created, telling it what format. So in this case, Parquet versus CSV file, and it'll go ahead and run this query, and you see I get my results back. And so I'm directly querying this without having done anything. This data is not in a table in my managed instance. I have another choice because I can actually go ahead and I can query this without specifying a data source. And in that scenario, you'll notice that I still have my bulk, but I give it the full path. So I'm telling it that it's on Azure Blob Storage, the container at, and then my storage account where it's located, and then the full path to the file. So you can see it's specifying the specific Parquet file there. And so, I can go ahead and I can pull this data back, and it comes back pretty quick.
Got it. Yeah, it's quick. It's kind of, and this was the scenario you were saying where if you wanted to do quick exploration, you would use something like this.
Right, and this is against a public data set. So then we get into what if I have a private data set? So this is in my own storage, but I've got maybe, and I've got security around it and I've got it locked down. So you can create your database scoped credential. And I want to call out that when in GA, this supports managed identity as well as the shared access signature. So you create your database scoped credential. You create your external data source. So this is telling it basically, again, the path. It's telling it my container and my storage account that I want to access. And then it's using that credential to access it. And then I can go ahead and I can run a query. So again, this is Open Row Set. So this is, I want to explore and see what's in here. And this is hitting a specific file. So you can see it's got the file name specified. So my data source is telling it the actual storage account and container, and then this bulk is providing the path and the file name. But I can do more than that. So I can also go in and I can say, I want to select from all the files. Notice I have an asterisk.parquet. So it's going to pull back the data from all the Parquet files I have in that folder. And you notice how I had 6 rows the first time, this time I have 12. So I actually have 2 files out there with 6 rows each, and it pulled back all of that data. Another cool thing that you can do if you run into sometimes when I may have a lot of data out there, and maybe with Parquet, it will infer the schema. With CSV, it does not, and you have to tell it. But maybe I don't like what it inferred, right? So I can actually go in and I can use this SP describe against it to see what the data types are, the system types that it would specify. And if I don't like that, like sometimes you might see where it does, I don't know, an nvarchar, and it might say, 8,000 or something, and that's not going to be accurate. Maybe it's only going to be 50. You could come in and you could change that. So, like in this scenario, I'm still using my Open Row Set, and it's still for a Parquet, but I'm actually specifying my data types here. So I could say my passenger count, I want as int, maybe some trip distance, float. So I can specify those, and that can sometimes get me better performance. Another thing I can do, even still with the Open Row Set, is I can create a view on it. So I can go ahead and say create view as a select from my Open Row Set query, and then I can select from the view that I created, so that I don't actually have to specify all the rest of this data. So a DBA could set this up for, say, a regular business user to go ahead and query that. And then the next fun one I can do is I can do an external data source where I create my external table. So I create my data source, and again, it's still referencing the specific container in my storage account, and I specify a credential for that to access it. I create my external file format. So in this case, again, I'm using Parquet. And then I create my external table. So I tell it what the columns are, what the data types are, and I specify the specific location. And notice this will pick up all the Parquet files in that taxi folder. And then I can go ahead and I can query off of my external table. And so you can see now, again, if I want to do repeat queries and stuff where I want better performance, so maybe analytics or Power BI type workloads, this is what I would want to use for that.
Gotcha. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I love how easy it is to kind of get started with the first kind of scenario or method that you showed us at the beginning. But then, like, yeah, if you're going to get really serious about this, start joining with other tables, start doing reporting on top of it, then this is a way. Would you actually be bringing the data in this case, or you're still querying it where it
Um,
is?
yeah, it's still residing external on the storage. So, if I come into Management Studio here, and if I go explore my tables, you'll notice that I have an external table um, that shows, and this is actually the table that we created. The data for this table is not inside of Managed Instance, so it's not hitting your storage limit or adding to it in any way. It doesn't increase your backup sizes. So again, because it's sitting on blob storage or ADLS, that typically is more cost effective. Now, obviously, it's not going to perform exactly the same as if it were in the database, but there's always those trade-offs, right?
100%. And then one more question, like let's say the that more files are added, more Parquet files are added to this folder. Do I need to go through this process again, or is it going to just pull whatever the latest is in the location that I specified?
So that's a great question. And that's where I go back to it kind of depends on how you actually create it. So you'll notice here that in my location, I did startup Parquet. So that means within this location, it will pick up all the files. So if I add new files, they'll become visible as well. Or they should say the data from those will become visible.
Okay, cool. That's really awesome. Thanks so much, Laura. This has been really insightful. Like I've learned a lot. I definitely want to go play with this. As folks are getting started, do you have any tips or tricks or other advice for using this?
Like I said, pay close attention to how you're going to use the data. So decide between Open Rosette and the external table, depending upon how you plan on using it, because you really want to get the best performance possible. And that's why I said, Open Rosette is good for the quick exploration of the files, but if it's something you're going to use repeatedly, then yes, absolutely go ahead and create that external table for it.
Awesome, cool. Well, Laura, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. To our viewers, if you like this episode, go ahead, give it a like, subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think about data virtualization in Azure SQL Managed Instance. And we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.